I woke up because my head felt cold. Not the kind of cold that comes from air conditioning or a window left open, this was different. It felt exposed, like something that was supposed to protect me was suddenly gone. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I stayed still, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what my body was telling me. The room looked normal. Morning light filtered through the curtains. My alarm hadn't gone off yet. Everything felt exactly the same as it always did. Except me. I lifted my hand slowly, half expecting my fingers to slide through my hair the way they always had. It was an unconscious habit. I'd had long hair for as long as I could remember, thick, dark, something people always commented on, something my mom used to brush for me when I was little. My fingers touched skin. Bare skin. I froze. I tried again, my hand moving faster now, panic creeping up my spine. My fingers ran across my scalp, uneven and rough, nothing like the familiar weight that should have been there. My heart slammed against my chest. No, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I sat up so fast the room spun. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and opened the front camera. The screen lit up, and for a moment, my brain refused to register what I was seeing. My hair was gone. Not trimmed. Not styled. Gone. Patches of my scalp were shaved clean. Other parts were hacked short, jagged, unfinished, like whoever did it hadn't cared how it looked as long as it was ruined. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't careless. It was deliberate. I stared at myself, mouth slightly open, eyes wide with disbelief. I touched my head again, pressing harder this time, as if I could somehow undo what had already been done. I couldn't. Someone had cut my hair while I slept. Someone had been standing over my bed with scissors, or a razor. While I was completely defenseless. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, trying to piece together how this could have happened. The night before replayed in my head. I had gone to bed early. No friends over. No arguments. No drinking. Tomorrow was my sister's graduation ceremony, something my family had been obsessing over for weeks. I'd been told to rest, to look presentable, to not cause stress. I swung my legs out of bed and stood up slowly, my knees weak. I walked to the mirror across the room, needing to see it without the distortion of my phone. It looked worse under bright light. My face felt wrong without my hair framing it. Vulnerable. Exposed. Like someone had stripped away a part of my identity without asking. I glanced at my bedroom door. That's when I noticed it. The lock was turned. Unlocked. I knew I had locked it before going to sleep. I always did. Living in my parents' house meant privacy was never guaranteed unless I took it myself. Someone had unlocked my door. Someone in this house. My chest tightened as I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Family photos lined the walls, smiling faces, holidays, birthdays, memories that suddenly felt staged and false. I walked straight to my parents' bedroom and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. My hands were shaking as I turned the handle and pushed the door open. My mom was sitting up in bed. My dad was next to her. Both awake. Both calm. They looked at me the way people look at someone who has just discovered something they were never meant to question. I swallowed hard. Did you do this? My mom didn't pretend not to understand. Yes, she said. Just one word. No hesitation. No surprise. No guilt. The room felt suddenly very small. Why? I asked, my voice thin, unfamiliar. She sighed, already annoyed. Because it was necessary. My dad crossed his arms. You were getting too full of yourself. I laughed once, a broken sound that didn't belong to humor. My hair made me full of myself? My mom's expression hardened. You know what I mean. No, I said quietly. I really don't. She leaned forward. Your sister's graduation is today. It's her moment. People were starting to compare you. Compare. The word cut deeper than any blade. Behind me, I heard footsteps. I turned and saw my sister standing in the doorway, already dressed, makeup done, confidence radiating off her like armor. She looked at my head, then at my face. And smiled. It wouldn't have been fair, she said. Everyone always talks about you. I stared at her. So you watched this happen? She shrugged. I suggested it. My stomach dropped. My mom nodded. It was meant to humble you. There it was. The justification. You cut my hair while I was asleep, I said slowly. It's just hair, my dad replied. You'll grow it back, my sister added. I looked at all three of them standing there together, united, unashamed, and something inside me went very still. They thought humiliation would make me smaller. They thought shock would make me obedient. They thought I would accept it quietly. They had no idea what they'd just started. I didn't say anything else. Not because I didn't have words, but because every word I wanted to say would have changed nothing in that moment. They were already convinced they were right. In their minds, this wasn't cruelty. It was correction. I turned around and walked back to my room. Behind me, my mom called out, "Don't be dramatic. We're already late." Late. As if I was the inconvenience. I closed my door and leaned against it, my palms flat against the wood. My reflection in the mirror across the room stared back at me. Someone I didn't recognize, someone stripped of choice. I dressed slowly. Carefully. I chose the simplest clothes I owned, not to hide what they'd done, but because I refused to perform grief for them. If they expected tears, rage, or begging, they weren't getting it. When we arrived at the graduation venue, heads turned immediately. People always notice change. They notice silence even more. Whispers followed me as I walked through the entrance. Some tried not to stare. Others didn't bother pretending. I felt their eyes land on my scalp, then flick up to my face, trying to read shame there. They didn't find it. My sister walked a few steps ahead of me, glowing in her cap and gown. My parents stayed close to her, laughing, greeting relatives, soaking in attention. Not one of them looked back to check on me. I found a seat near the aisle and sat down. Someone leaned over and whispered, "Are you okay?" I smiled politely. "I'm fine." That was the truth. Not emotionally, but mentally. Because somewhere between waking up bald and sitting in that chair, something had shifted. I stopped seeing them as family. I started seeing them as people who had underestimated me. The ceremony dragged on. Speeches about sacrifice, love, support. Words that felt hollow coming from a stage while my own mother sat a few rows ahead, clapping like she hadn't violated my trust hours earlier. When my sister's name was called, the crowd erupted. My parents stood up, cheering. I stayed seated. She crossed the stage, shaking hands, smiling for cameras. She glanced into the crowd and caught my eye for half a second. There was something smug there, something victorious. She thought she'd won. Afterward, at the reception, relatives crowded around her. Compliments. Photos. Stories about her future. People barely acknowledged me, and when they did, it was with pity. "Oh, what happened to your hair? Was it a medical thing? You still look strong." I answered politely. I didn't correct anyone. Because correcting them would have meant explaining. And explaining would have meant revealing. I wasn't ready to reveal anything yet. That night, back home, I locked my door again. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. I logged into an account no one in that house knew existed. An account I'd opened years ago, back when I learned the first real lesson of growing up in that family. Never let them know everything. While my parents focused all their attention on my sister, her grades, her awards, her future, I had quietly built something of my own. I worked. I saved. I invested. I learned. They thought I was getting by. They had no idea I was preparing. I checked my balance. The numbers hadn't changed. Seeing them didn't make me feel powerful. It made me feel calm. Because for the first time that day, I remembered something important. They still controlled the house. They still controlled the narrative. But they did not control me. The next morning, my mom knocked on my door. "Breakfast," she said. "And don't wear a hat. People will think you're trying to make a statement." I opened the door and looked at her. "I am making one," I replied. She scoffed. "You're being childish." "Maybe. But children don't plan quietly. Children don't document everything. Children don't wait." Over the next few weeks, I played my role perfectly. I was polite. I was quiet. I didn't bring up the haircut again. They relaxed. My sister moved on with her life, convinced the problem had been handled. My parents stopped watching me so closely. They thought the humiliation had worked. What they didn't realize was that every time I caught my reflection, every uneven patch, every reminder of that morning, it sharpened my focus. I gathered records. Messages. Old conversations. Photos. I spoke to people outside the family. People who saw what had happened for what it really was. Control. Punishment. Fear. And then, one afternoon, my mom called me into the living room. "We've been talking," she said, folding her hands like this was a business meeting. "Your sister is going to need support now that she's graduating. We'll need you to contribute more." I nodded slowly. "How much?" "Whatever you can," my dad said. "It's only fair." Fair. I looked at them, really looked at them, and realized this was the moment. I didn't rush anything. That was the part they never understood about me. I was patient. While my parents assumed my agreement meant obedience, I was quietly setting boundaries they didn't see yet. While my sister talked about her future, I was restructuring mine. The first change came quietly. I stopped contributing in the way they expected. Not openly. Not dramatically. Just, precisely. When my mom asked for money to help with groceries, I transferred a smaller amount than usual. When my dad hinted about bills, I paid them directly instead of handing over cash. Control, I'd learned, was often disguised as generosity. They noticed. "Money's been tight for you lately," my mom asked one evening, watching me too closely. I met her gaze calmly. "I'm reorganizing things." She frowned. "Reorganizing what?" "My priorities." That was the first crack. A week later, my sister asked me to co-sign something. A lease. She spoke casually, like it was a given. Like my support was automatic. "I can't," I said. She blinked. "What do you mean you can't?" "I mean I won't." Her smile faded. "You owe me." That word again. I leaned back in my chair. "For what?" She scoffed. "Everything Mom and Dad did for you." I almost laughed. But instead, I said, "You mean the haircut?" The room went silent. She stared at me, stunned that I'd said it out loud. My parents exchanged a look. "That was discipline," my mom snapped. "And we already discussed this." "No," I replied evenly. "You discussed it. I endured it." My dad stood up. "You're being disrespectful." I nodded. And you're being honest. Finally. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't announce it. I didn't threaten. I didn't argue. I just left. They didn't think I'd actually go. The first few days were quiet. Too quiet. Then the messages started. Where are you? This is immature. You're overreacting. Come home. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something else. I changed access. Accounts. Passwords. Permissions. Anything that had ever been shared suddenly wasn't. They found out when payments stopped clearing the way they used to. My mom called first. Then my dad. Then my sister, over and over. I answered none of them. A week later, I agreed to meet. Public place. Neutral ground. They arrived tense. Defensive. My sister looked annoyed. My parents looked confused. My mom spoke first. You've made your point. I tilted my head. I haven't made it yet. My dad frowned. You can't just cut us off. I didn't, I said calmly. I stepped away. My sister laughed bitterly. From what? You're nothing without us. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how small her world still was. You cut my hair while I slept, I said softly. You told yourselves it was justice. Control. Humbling me. I paused. And now you're surprised I won't let you touch my life anymore. My mom's voice shook. We're your family. No, I said. You were my environment. I've outgrown it. Silence fell over the table. They didn't apologize. They didn't have to. Because in that moment, they understood something they never had before. I didn't need them. I stood up, picked up my bag, and walked away. Behind me, my phone buzzed. One message. Please talk to us. I didn't block them. I didn't reply either. Some lessons don't require closure. Some power doesn't need to be proven. And some people only realize too late that the moment they tried to humble you was the moment they lost access to you forever. They still thought I was beneath them. They still thought I needed their approval. They still thought I had nothing else. I smiled. Okay, I said. I'll help. Their shoulders relaxed. They had no idea that agreeing wasn't surrender. It was timing.